My name is Jordan. I'm on the integration team here at Bitwarden. Thank you everyone for joining today. Bitwarden Brilliance is our session to engage with the community and our customers to take technical deep dives on topics related to password management. We do these the third Thursday of every month. And today we're going to be talking about self-hosted in an air gap. We've got a few quick slides to get through, just make sure everyone is on the same page, and then we will get started with a demonstration. So today we're going to be going through a quick overview of Bitwarden, as well as an overview of self-hosting your Bitwarden environment on-premise or in your own cloud. We'll talk through some of the specific details related to what self-hosting looks like in a air-gapped environment, what air-gap means and why you would want to do that. And then we'll get right back into a demo. So we're going to do a live installation. I'm getting some feedback that my audio is a little quiet. I do see in OBS that I'm not hitting the same levels that I would expect. So I have adjusted that up. If I still am quiet, the rest of the team, please flag that for me. So speaking of the team, there are a bunch of folks from the integration team hanging out in the chat. As we go through the demo, feel free to drop any questions or comments there so that they can help you out. And with that, let's move on with the slides. So quick overview of Bitwarden. Bitwarden is a password manager. At least that is the part we're going to be focusing on today, is our enterprise password management solution. This is a zero-knowledge and end-to-end encrypted way to store and share sensitive details with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Whatever you have to share, Bitwarden will be there with our easy-to-use clients available on many different platforms. And as we'll be talking about today, you have a number of different ways to deploy Bitwarden. We, of course, have our cloud available in either the US or the EU, and then self-hosted on-prem through a variety of different installation mechanisms. So we have a lot of different ways to get that password manager deployed for you. What that server is doing for you is it is going to synchronize all your data across all of those clients, so you have easy access to it wherever you are. We take a approach of community and customer centricity and being transparent. If you want to check out how the code works, please check us out on GitHub. And with that, let's move on to talk about some of the details of self-hosting. So the Bitwarden server, like I said, that's what's actually synchronizing your data. Because of our zero-knowledge and end-to-end encryption solution, your data is always encrypted locally on whatever client you're using before it's sent back to the Bitwarden server. And then the server is kind of handling the sending it out to all of your other clients or the people that you're sharing it with. And so what that means is in some deployments, you might have Bitwarden Cloud, so you're relying on infrastructure that we manage for you. But for a lot of folks, self-hosting is a better fit or a requirement for the use case. So when we're talking about self-hosting Bitwarden, we are talking about containers that are orchestrated using Docker Compose or Helm, which means it is compatible with Windows Server, Linux, and Kubernetes host platforms. We do have an installation script that's available for most environments. You can get the Bitwarden self-hosted server up and running in 5-10 minutes if you really rush through that script. But today we'll be looking at one of our advanced deployment options, which is air-gapped environments. So the self-hosted deployment has feature parity with the cloud and is compatible with all Bitwarden clients and is available for enterprise organizations. So there are some requirements for an air gap. You do need some form of container orchestration. So we'll be looking at Docker Compose, but you can also do this in Kubernetes with our Helm chart. You will need a Docker registry, local or remote. What that means when you install Docker in our example today, Linux VM, it has a registry built into it. So you can host those image files locally. You can also bring your own Docker registry. This would be something like artifactories that you can add vulnerability scanning to your containers. This is usually in larger environments where you have a lot of different Docker-based applications to deploy. You can just slot the Bitwarden containers into that. You're also going to need a SMTP endpoint. SMTP for Bitwarden is a pretty critical part of how a number of different features work, and especially for administrators to help maintain that zero knowledge aspect of things. But SMTP endpoint does not mean that you have to punch a firewall hole and let email out through the public internet. You may have a local SMTP server within your airgap. In today's example, we're going to be using a tool called MailPit. That's just a local kind of developer tool for providing SMTP to an application. It also has a web interface so that you can view the messages that Bitwarden is sending. Hopefully the demo gods are with us today and we won't have to dive into that, but if we need to get into some troubleshooting, we'll take a look at the MailPit web interface as well. Within that isolated network, you will need connectivity on ports 80 and 443, depending on any additional integrations that you have with your Bitwarden server. For example, OIDC for login with SSO. You may need some additional firewall rules, but the bare minimum is going to be 80 and 443 within that network. And then some sort of DMZ or sneakernet for transferring Docker images in from where we publish them on Docker Hub. Now, if you need some help, kind of figuring out what is going to work well for you in your environment, everyone who is on this stream in the Bitwarden integration team is happy to answer any specific questions that you might have. If there's something you don't want to raise publicly here in the Twitch chat, just reach out to us at bitwarden.com/contact. So what are the steps for installing in an air gap? We'll take a look at the online documentation for this as we go through these steps, but a basic overview. There are some environment configuration steps. You need to install Docker, stage the configuration files and that images tarball that you bring in. There are deployment variables that you can customize. Bitwarden's a very extensible solution made to fit a variety of use cases, so you want to set those up specific for what you need. You'll need to either generate or configure TLS for the web app and API. So these are just regular certificates. You can do what we're going to be doing today with a self-signed certificate, bring an organization signed certificate, or one from a public CA, whatever works best for you. We're then going to load those Docker images into the local registry, or optionally, if you have like an artifactory or something like that, customize the image tags in the docker compose.yaml to point to that. And then start the Bitwarden containers and create your organization. So why do people use an air gap? Don't have a slide on this one. For a lot of environments, you need that extra isolation. Zero knowledge and end-to-end encryption are a great foundation to build your security on, but depending on other organizational requirements, you may not want your Bitwarden server exposed to the public internet or even a broader WAN within your organization. We're very confident in the security of the Bitwarden code itself. When you run Bitwarden self-hosted, you are running the exact same code that we operate as a multi-tenant SaaS on our cloud. So we are confident that you can deploy Bitwarden self-hosted server on the open internet, but if your organization requires it, these are kind of the best practices to go through to get started. So let's do just that. This is the guide we're going to be working off of today, but as you can see up here, we have one quick other topic that I want to cover. Bitwarden's Open Source Security Summit is on September 26th, coming up later this month. This is a series of talks with some great folks in the industry. Folks who attend this are usually industry leaders and our whole community of enthusiasts. So If you are interested in these kinds of topics, head to opensourcesecuritysummit.com and save your free seat. This is a free and virtual conference that we hold every year, so I'm very much looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. With that said, let's head into the installation guide. Now, as we go through these steps here on the stream, there are a couple of the steps that I have modified. I won't be running exactly what is in the guide. That's not because these steps necessarily require modification, although I will call out the ones that you should customize. They are because some of those environment files that I mentioned earlier do contain sensitive information. I don't want to put that stuff on stream, so I am starting with a VM in GCP that has had some of these steps already configured. I also do want to acknowledge the warning here in the document. This is a lot of manual steps, and if you don't absolutely need to take these steps to maintain your installation because of requirements in your organization, we do recommend using the automation script. It just takes care of a lot of stuff for you. So we do only recommend the offline deployment be conducted by advanced users. Next, we've got some basic system requirements and then some links for getting Docker Engine set up, as well as getting those staged files. So Bitwarden is composed of Docker images, like we talked about, and then this zip file, which contains templated versions of all of our environment files and the Docker Compose YAML itself. You do want to make sure that you have those set up and ready before you proceed. And then, of course, that SMTP server. In addition to that, Bitwarden does require some form of DNS, especially in an air-gapped environment. That's probably going to look different than a publicly available domain name, and it will work with something like modifying your localhost file. But just to minimize the number of redirect errors or SSL certificate errors that you get, it is not supported to run Bitwarden just on a bare IP address. Do provision yourself either in your local DNS resolver or, like I mentioned, by configuring your host file, some form of FQDN, and get the IP pointed before you get started. So next we are going to create the Bitwarden local user and directory, and that is where we are going to head over here to our prepared terminal and start getting some commands run. So I'm logged in as a administrative user on this GCP VM. I'm deploying on Rocky Linux 9 today, although pretty much any distribution that will run Docker will be supported. So we're going to create a user for Bitwarden and add it to the Docker group so that it can run Docker containers. And we're then going to give Bitwarden a place to live. /op/Bitwarden is the default. Now in this directory, I've got some of those files that I had staged earlier. So I'm going to drop those files into /op/Bitwarden. All of this is for some isolation, particularly with this command. We are only going to allow the Bitwarden user access to that opt Bitwarden directory, and then we'll just make sure all of those files are owned by the Bitwarden user so that we can drop down in there and get started. Oh, I actually want to be in BW data. So as you can see, we've run through these steps here in the Help Center to get us to where we need to be. Now we've got some of the stuff that I'm not going to show on stream for password reasons. So over here, we are going to talk about but not show some of the steps for customizing these. I do have this BW data directory. That's what you get when you unzip the release artifact. And then there are a couple of files to modify. So this global.override.env file, this is a lot of the basic settings for your installation, things like what that domain you chose is, setting a password for the built-in database that will be generated when you run the install, things like this. The one that I want to draw particular attention to is this push relay base URL. You don't customize this in every Bitwarden installation, but for offline installs, we do want to prevent the Bitwarden server from trying to make certain types of outbound communication to our cloud service. Outside of an air-gapped environment, Bitwarden will communicate with the Bitwarden self-hosted server will communicate with the Bitwarden cloud for things like license synchronization, if you enable that, as well as the free Bitwarden families in your enterprise organization that your users can use to set up a personal Bitwarden account, as well as notifying the Bitwarden clients that they have updated vault data to sync. By setting push relay base URL to nothing, so having it just be an equal sign, we are telling the self-hosted server not to attempt those communications. In the tip box, there is also a section on the SMTP variables. I am going to go ahead and grep those out here on stream because for the example here, I'm using MailPit. This is pretty similar to what you would set up if you have a unauthenticated SMTP relay, for example. My SMTP host is set just to MailPit. That's because I am going to run the MailPit container within the Bitwarden Docker Compose. In fact, I have it over here using what we call a override file. By creating this docker-compose.override.yaml, anytime I start the Bitwarden containers, it's going to start this additional MailPit container, and I can reference it just by its container name as the host, which is a easy tip. And then some other best practices here for an unauthenticated relay, or MailPit in this example, easy quick start. If you set the port to 25 and SSL to false, and then make sure you change these from the word replace to being like push relay base URL equal to nothing, Bitwarden will not attempt to authenticate with the SMTP server. I've also pre-staged the steps of setting up SSL. So you can go ahead and run these two commands unmodified. You can customize them if you want. This is a internal only certificate, so only for intra-container traffic. And then I have also created a self-signed SSL certificate. We do have another document under certificate options if you would like some example commands on how to generate that. So I've completed step 5 and we are on to step 6, where I'm going to modify the Nginx configuration. I'm going to replace the placeholder value from the Docker stub file in Nginx with the DNS I've set up for this stream. And I am also going to make the change here to appid.json. But now I do want to go ahead and open up that Nginx config file just to flag another best practice here. So you can see in the Nginx config that these certificate files start with /etc/SSL. So that's not because these certificate files are located at this location on the host OS. I can't go there now. I'm also going to real quick disable that. We bind mount a variety of directories from this BW data directory into the containers. And so what that means is that the same files exist in the host OS and in the container, but the locations are different. So this bwdata SSL directory will be mounted into the Nginx container at /etc/SSL. So when you are modifying configuration files that will be inside the container, you need to use the path that is inside the container. So that's why Nginx config there shows /etc, even though these files in the host OS are under /opt. Next up here, I need to set up the uid.env. So I'm just going to check. I've got a UID of 1009 and a GID of 1010. So I'm going to create that file. And now we are on to downloading and transferring the images. Now, I did this step already and transferred that to the VM before the stream, but there are a list of tags in that Docker Compose that you will see in the stub zip file from GitHub, and then you can save those on an internet-connected workstation before you transfer them offline. So we are going to move on up to images here, and oops. Which ones? I want XVF. There we go. So I'm going to extract this tarball that contains all of the container images that I need to run. Let that complete. And then next what we're going to do is load these into that local registry. And as you can see, waiting for us in the very next step, we're going to get the server started. So we are almost done here. Next, I'm just going to run a quick little bash loop here. This is just looking at all of those image files and running that Docker image load command on them. So this will take just a minute as it loads each Bitwarden container image into the local registry. If you're bringing an artifactory or something, you would skip this step on the VM and load it in there. Off they go. Check in chat. Thanks everyone for being here. And yeah, we'll get the stream up for replay on that YouTube playlist, hopefully right after the stream. Should be loading in one of the last images now. Nginx and notifications, and then finally skim. Not finally skim. SSO. And web. All right. So now we are ready for the final step. We're going to go back to bwdata, and right before we do that, just to prove that this is an air gap, just a quick curl to Bitwarden here. I'm not going to wait for this to fully time out, but just so everyone can see, we are well and truly offline. I actually need to be in the Docker directory, and then I'm going to run docker compose up-d, and it's going to go through and create all of those containers, including my mailpick container. And then we'll just watch for these to come online. Usually takes about 30 to 45 seconds before we see the health checks all complete. And I do have some kind of funky networking for this GCP VM. It can't make outbound connections on port 443, but I have set it up to allow inbound. So we will be able to load up the web app and create our first account momentarily. The last couple of containers are finishing their health checks now. This is because the MS SQL built-in database is getting started and populated. MS SQL is healthy. Icons will briefly flap to unhealthy. That is expected in the offline deployment. It will, on its next check, pick up correctly. So we are here in our offline installation. Let's go ahead and create an account. And then we can log in. Give that an extra second. The first login to a self-hosted server is always a little bit optimistic, especially because, oh yeah, I probably have this cached from the practice stream I did. Let me just run that back one more time. There we go. All right, and now we have our self-hosted server up and running. We've got some getting started steps here. We can go ahead and upload our organization license file if we want. I am going to click that just to show that we don't get an error from SMTP. The mail pit is working successfully. But with that, that is the full run through of getting a air-gapped server up and running. If there are any questions, happy to address those here on the stream. But otherwise, if not, really appreciate everyone swinging by. Thanks for your interest, and have a great rest of your day.